Pause for a moment. What if everything you thought you understood about speaking in tongues is only the surface and the real meaning has been hidden behind noise, imitation, and misunderstanding? What if God is not impressed by sound but by surrender? What if the mystery you have been chasing is not about syllables but about surrendering your spirit so deeply to God that your limitations no longer control you? I am not here to entertain you. I am here to shake you. Because when God reveals truth, it does not tickle your ears, it transforms your heart. Many people think speaking in tongues is about volume. They think it is about emotion. They think it is about a dramatic moment where words spill out and everyone looks impressed. But God is not searching for performance. God is searching for alignment. And when God began to deal with my heart about this, the message was clear. What you call tongues is not what I call surrender. You are focused on the sound, but I focus on the source. You are focused on the display, but I focus on the depth. Listen carefully. When a person truly connects with God, language becomes secondary. The first transformation is not in the mouth, it is in the heart. The first evidence is not in the tone, it is in obedience. God is not moved because someone can speak what others cannot understand. God is moved when a person empties pride, empties fear, empties doubt, and allows His authority to govern their spirit. That is where the power begins. There are people who can produce spiritual sounds but cannot produce spiritual discipline. There are people who can move their lips but cannot move their character. And God is saying, this is not what I intended. Speaking in tongues at its deepest level is not about impressing people. It is about transcending your natural limitations in communion with God. It is the place where your intellect bows and your spirit rises. It is the place where control shifts from your ego to divine guidance. Understand this, God does not need your vocabulary. God desires your yieldedness. When you truly surrender, something happens inside you. Fear loses its grip. Anxiety begins to weaken. Confusion starts to clear. Not because you mastered the technique, but because you submitted to God's authority. The real miracle is not mysterious language. The real miracle is transformation. Too many chase experiences but avoid discipline. They want the fire without the refining. They want the manifestation without the maturity. But God will not pour divine power into an undisciplined vessel. If you want depth in the spirit, you must build strength in private. You must develop consistency when no one is watching. You must choose obedience when it is inconvenient. Because true spiritual language flows from a life that has been aligned. God showed me that when a person truly prays beyond their natural understanding, what is happening is deeper than sound. Their spirit is stretching. Their dependence. They are acknowledging that their intellect is not enough. That humility opens a gateway. And in that place, God begins to rearrange things you cannot see. Battles are shifted. Strength is renewed. Vision becomes clearer. But if your heart is not surrendered and the sound is empty, you must ask yourself, is your pursuit about power or about God? Is it about spiritual reputation or about genuine relationship? Because God is not interested in religious theater. God is interested in authentic communion. And authentic communion requires honesty. It requires you to admit your weakness. It requires you to recognize that without God, you are limited. When people misunderstand spiritual language, they reduce it to a ritual. They treat it like a badge. But God does not give spiritual gifts as trophies. God releases spiritual empowerment as tools for transformation, and transformation begins within. If your character is not changing, if your compassion is not growing, if your integrity is not strengthening, then you must question whether you are chasing the sound instead of the source. Let me speak plainly. You can imitate sound. You cannot imitate surrender. You can copy patterns. You cannot fake purity before God. When your spirit truly aligns with God, it produces fruit. It produces courage in hardship. It produces peace in chaos. It produces clarity in confusion. That is the evidence of divine connection. The reason many remain stagnant is because they have mistaken external expression for internal transformation. They believe that because something emotional happened, something eternal has changed, but God measures depth differently. God measures by obedience. God measures by humility. God measures by love. When you enter into deep spiritual prayer beyond your own understanding, what is happening is not mystical entertainment. It is strategic strengthening. Your natural mind is stepping aside so that your spirit can be fortified by God. It is not about escaping reality. It is about being equipped to confront it. And when you come out of that place, you should not look the same. You should not think the same. You should not respond the same. If your spiritual experiences do not produce discipline, they are incomplete. If your spiritual expressions do not produce compassion, they are shallow. Because God is not building noise, God is building warriors of character. God is raising people whose inner life is stronger than their outer challenges. There is a reason many feel powerless even after dramatic moments. It is because they never learned to remain in surrender. They visited the presence of God but did not live in submission. They touched the edge but never entered the depth. Real power flows from consistency. Real authority flows from obedience. God began to reveal that true spiritual language is the overflow of a surrendered heart. It is the expression of trust beyond comprehension. It is the declaration that you are no longer relying on your limited reasoning. And in that surrender, God strengthens you from within, not for show, not for applause, but for endurance. You must understand the enemy of depth is pride. Pride wants to be seen. Pride wants to be validated. Pride wants recognition. But true communion with God often happens in hidden places. It happens in early mornings when no one is listening. It happens in tears that no one sees. It happens in whispered prayers that never reach a microphone. And in those hidden moments, God builds you. God refines you. God removes impurities from your motives. God exposes the areas where you still cling to control, because speaking beyond your understanding is not about losing your mind, it is about yielding your control. There is a level of trust where you stop trying to impress God and start allowing God to transform you. At that level, spiritual language becomes a byproduct, not a performance. It becomes the overflow of intimacy, not the centerpiece of identity. You are no longer defined by what you sound like, you are defined by who you obey. Ask yourself honestly, when you pray deeply, does your life shift? Do your habits change? Do your reactions improve? Does your faith become bolder? If not, then perhaps you have been focusing on the wrong aspect. Because God does not release divine empowerment for entertainment. God releases it for equipping. When you truly align with God, fear begins to break. You start speaking with confidence, not because of conviction. You begin walking with assurance, not because you have all answers, but because you trust the one who does. That is the fruit of real spiritual depth. God is calling you beyond imitation. God is calling you beyond tradition. God is calling you beyond noise. He is calling you into authentic surrender. And surrender is not weakness. Surrender is strength under divine authority. It is choosing to trust God more than your emotions. It is choosing obedience over comfort. The greatest misunderstanding is believing that spiritual power is measured by volume. It is not. Spiritual power is measured by alignment. When your thoughts align with God's truth, when your actions reflect God's will, when your heart is purified by humility, that is power. And when you pray beyond your understanding, it should not be an escape from responsibility. Fuel responsibility should energize discipline. It should strengthen your resolve to live uprightly. Because if your spiritual life is real, your daily life will show it. God is not interested in part-time devotion. God desires complete surrender. Not occasional passion, but consistent obedience. Not dramatic moments only, but daily faithfulness. And when you cultivate that, your spirit becomes strong. Your confidence grows. Your perspective shifts. Many are waiting for a supernatural experience to fix what only discipline can build. But God works through process. He strengthens you.
He matures you steadily.
He deepens you intentionally. And when you commit to daily alignment, the overflow becomes natural. Real spiritual language is born from intimacy. Intimacy is built through honesty. Honesty requires humility. And humility invites transformation. That is the chain. You cannot skip steps. You cannot manufacture depth. You must cultivate it. When you truly understand this, your focus changes. You stop chasing experiences and start pursuing God wholeheartedly. You stop measuring spirituality by moments and start measuring it by maturity. You stop seeking attention and start seeking alignment. And when that shift happens, something powerful takes place inside you. Anxiety begins to lose authority. Doubt begins to shrink. Courage begins to rise. Because you are no longer depending on your limited strength. You are depending on God's limitless power. The greatest revelation is this: spiritual language without surrendered living is noise. But surrendered living, empowered by deep communion with God, produces unstoppable faith. It produces resilience in hardship. It produces wisdom in uncertainty. It produces stability in storms. Do not settle for imitation. Do not settle for shallow expression. Go deeper. Allow God to confront your pride. Allow God to refine your motives. Allow God to strengthen your character. Because when your foundation is solid, the overflow will be authentic. There is a dimension of prayer where you stop striving and start thinking, where you stop performing and start surrendering, where you stop analyzing and start aligning. In that dimension, God fortifies your inner being. He rearranges your priorities. He clarifies your calling. And from that place, when words rise beyond your natural understanding, they are not empty sounds. They are the overflow of a heart fully yielded. They are the expression of trust beyond intellect. They are the evidence that you have allowed God to take control. But remember, the true evidence will always be your life. Are you more patient? Are you more disciplined? Are you more compassionate? Are you more courageous? If yes, then you are growing. If not, then return to surrender. Because God is not impressed by display. God is moved by devotion. God is not seeking noise. God is seeking hearts that are completely His. And when your heart is fully surrendered, every aspect of your life becomes an offering. Your work becomes worship. Your discipline becomes devotion. Your integrity becomes testimony. Do not misunderstand the depth of what God desires to do in you. He is not trying to give you an experience to talk about. He is building you into a vessel of strength. He is shaping you into a person of unwavering faith. He is training you to stand firm when others collapse. And that training happens in surrender. It happens in hidden moments. It happens when you choose obedience over impulse. It happens when you choose humility over pride. It happens when you trust God, even when you do not understand. So if you truly want spiritual depth, start with your character. If you truly want divine empowerment, cultivate discipline. If you truly want to experience communion beyond words, surrender completely. Because when your heart belongs fully to God, your spirit will reflect His strength. Your life will display His wisdom. And your journey will reveal a transformation that no sound alone could ever produce as you continue walking deeper, trusting more, yielding fully, allowing God to shape every thought, every desire, every action, until your entire existence becomes a living testimony of unwavering surrender and unshakable faith that keeps expanding beyond limits, beyond fear, beyond doubt, into the vast and powerful purpose that God has prepared for those who choose alignment over applause and obedience over appearance and depth, over display and truth, over tradition and surrender, over spectacle and authenticity, over imitation and relentless pursuit of God, over temporary emotional moments that fade without producing lasting transformation in the core of who you are. There comes a moment in your spiritual journey when God will confront the image you have created of power. You imagined it would feel explosive, dramatic, overwhelming. But when God truly begins to deepen you, it often feels quiet, steady, and demanding. It feels like discipline when you want comfort. It feels like conviction when you want celebration. It feels like stretching when you want ease. And this is where many turn back. They want the sensation without the submission. They want the manifestation without the maturity. But God is not raising fragile followers. God is raising resilient hearts. Understand this with clarity. When you pray beyond your understanding, when your spirit reaches beyond your intellect, the greatest battle is not external, it is internal. It is the battle between control and surrender. Your mind wants explanation. Your ego wants recognition. Your flesh wants convenience. But God calls for trust, and trust is proven when you obey without needing to dominate the outcome. There is a depth of communion where God begins to reorder your priorities. You start valuing integrity more than influence. You start valuing obedience more than opportunity. You start valuing alignment more than applause. And in that reordering, you begin to see that true spiritual language is not about mysterious expression. It is about divine alignment that reshapes your entire existence. Many people want to access spiritual power without confronting their hidden weaknesses. They want to pray intensely but refuse to forgive. They want to speak boldly but refuse to humble themselves. They want authority but reject accountability. But God will not entrust greater depth to a divided heart. If you are unwilling to let God correct you, you are not ready for God to empower you. Let this truth settle in your spirit. God is more concerned with who you are becoming than what you are displaying. The unseen transformation matters more than the visible moment. The hidden discipline matters more than the public declaration, because what is built in secret determines what stands in storms. When your spirit prays beyond understanding, what God is truly building is endurance. Endurance when the promise seems delayed. Endurance when the pressure increases. Endurance when you feel misunderstood. And endurance is not produced through comfort, it is produced through surrender under pressure. Some of you are asking why your spiritual moments have not translated into lasting change. The answer is not condemnation, it is clarity. You visited intensity, but you did not remain in obedience. You touched inspiration, but you did not cultivate consistency. God does not want occasional fire, God desires steady flame. A steady flame that does not burn out when emotions cool. A steady flame that does not depend on atmosphere but on alignment. There is a sacred exchange that happens when you fully yield to God. You release control and God releases clarity. You release pride and God releases peace. You release fear and God releases courage. But if you cling to your will, you block the flow of transformation. Surrender is not losing yourself, it is finding strength in God's authority. You must examine your motives with courage. Are you pursuing spiritual depth to feel superior? Are you seeking experiences to validate your identity? Or are you genuinely hungry? Presence to refine you? God cannot be manipulated by enthusiasm. God responds to authenticity, and authenticity demands transparency. When your communion with God deepens, your reactions change. You stop responding out of impulse and start responding out of wisdom. You stop being easily offended and start being deeply anchored. You stop chasing approval and start walking in purpose. That is the evidence that your spirit is being strengthened. True spiritual depth will challenge your habits. It will confront your laziness. It will expose your distractions. It will demand that you guard your thoughts, your speech, your time. Because when you say you want more of God, you are inviting refinement. And refinement is not comfortable, but it is powerful. There is a reason why God often works in silence. Silence reveals what noise hides. In silence, your insecurities surface. In silence, your doubts become visible. In silence, your true dependence is tested. And when you remain surrendered in silence, your foundation becomes unshakable. Many think spiritual power is proven in loud moments. But the greatest demonstrations of divine strength are often seen in restraint. When you choose patience over retaliation, when you choose integrity over compromise, when you choose trust over panic, that is where real authority manifests. Do not reduce spiritual language to sound alone. The truest language of the Spirit is obedience. When God prompts you to forgive, and you forgive that, is powerful. When God convicts you to change and you change, that is powerful. When God calls you to trust and you trust, that is powerful. These acts may not draw attention, but they shift atmospheres in ways you cannot measure. The deeper you go with God, the more sensitive you become to His direction. Small compromises begin to feel heavy. Small acts of obedience begin to feel significant. Your conscience becomes sharper. Your discernment becomes clearer. And this sharpening is part of the strengthening. God does not waste your seasons of confusion. When you do not understand what is happening, but you remain surrendered, your roots grow deeper. Roots that grow deep produce fruit that lasts. You cannot see roots expanding, but they determine the stability of the tree. You must stop equating intensity with maturity. Intensity can be emotional. Maturity is disciplined. Intensity can be temporary. Maturity is consistent. God is building maturity in you. And maturity means your faith does not fluctuate with circumstances. It means your devotion does not disappear in difficulty. It means your obedience does not depend on convenience. When you pray beyond understanding, your spirit is being trained to rely on God above your reasoning. That reliance must extend into your decisions, your relationships, your ambitions. If you separate your spiritual moments from your daily conduct, you create division within yourself. God desires wholeness. Wholeness means your private life matches your public expression. Wholeness means your character supports your calling. Wholeness means your integrity sustains your influence. And this kind of wholeness can only be developed through continuous surrender. There is also a dimension of courage that emerges when you truly align with God. You become less intimidated by opposition. You become less shaken by criticism. You become less dependent on validation. Because your confidence is no longer rooted in human affirmation, it is anchored in divine approval. Do not underestimate the power of internal transformation. When your thoughts begin to align with truth, your words change. When your words change, your actions follow. When your actions shift, your destiny adjusts. Everything begins in the unseen realm of your heart. Some of you are waiting for a sign, but God is waiting for surrender. You are asking for clarity, but God is asking for trust. You are seeking confirmation, but God is seeking obedience. When you take one step of faithfulness, revelation follows. Your greatest breakthroughs will not come from copying someone else's experience. They will come from cultivating your own authentic relationship with God. Comparison weakens conviction. Imitation without understanding leads to emptiness. But personal surrender produces real strength. As your spirit grows stronger, you will notice a shift in your appetite. You will crave depth over distraction. You will crave discipline over disorder. You will crave purpose over popularity. This shift is evidence that God is reshaping your desires. When trials come, and they will come, your foundation will be tested. If your spiritual life was built on emotion alone, it will crumble. But if it was built on daily surrender, it will stand firm. Storms reveal structure. Pressure exposes preparation. Do not be afraid of the stretching. When God stretches you, He is expanding your capacity. When God corrects you, He is protecting your future. When God delays you, He is developing your endurance. Every process has purpose. You must also understand that spiritual growth requires responsibility. The deeper your communion, the greater your accountability. You cannot claim intimacy with God while living carelessly. Depth demands discipline. Power demands purity. Authority demands alignment. There is a fire that refines and a fire that consumes. When you surrender to God, the refining fire removes what weakens you. It burns away pride. It melts stubbornness. It purifies motives. And what remains is strength. You are not called to be a performer of spirituality. You are called to be a vessel of integrity. When your life reflects consistency, when your decisions reflect wisdom, when your speech reflects compassion, you become a living testimony of transformation. Let this truth resonate deeply. The greatest miracle is a changed heart. A heart that once resisted now obeys. A heart that once doubted now trusts. A heart that once feared now stands firm. It is the work of God within you. Do not rush the process. Do not compare your journey. Do not seek shortcuts. Spiritual depth is cultivated through patience. Strength is developed through repetition. Faith is strengthened through testing. And as you continue to yield, something remarkable happens. Your presence begins to carry peace. Your words begin to carry weight. Your decisions begin to reflect wisdom beyond your natural ability. This is not self-generated. It is the result of alignment. You begin to see challenges differently. Instead of seeing obstacles, you see opportunities for growth. Instead of reacting in frustration, you respond with trust. Instead of shrinking back, you step forward with conviction. God is shaping you into someone who does not crumble under pressure, someone who does not compromise under temptation, someone who does not retreat under criticism. This shaping requires surrender every day, not just in moments of intensity. As you go deeper, distractions lose their grip. You become more focused, more intentional, more disciplined, because your vision is clearer, and clarity fuels commitment. Remember this: the authenticity of your spiritual life is revealed in your consistency when no one is watching. When you choose honesty in private, when you choose prayer in quiet, when you choose restraint in temptation, that is where strength is forged. Do not settle for surface-level devotion. Press deeper. Seek God not for sensation, but for formation. Seek alignment more than experience. Seek obedience more than excitement. When you reach that level of surrender, your life becomes a reflection of divine order. Chaos loses authority. Fear loses influence. Doubt loses dominance. And you walk with a steadiness that cannot be easily shaken. This is the depth God desires for you. Not shallow expression, but rooted conviction. Not temporary emotion, but lasting transformation. Not imitation, but authentic alignment. And when your heart remains fully yielded, your spirit strengthened through continuous communion, your character refined through obedience, and your faith anchored in unwavering trust, you become living proof that true spiritual power is not about sound alone, but about a life completely surrendered to God, sustained by discipline, shaped by humility, empowered by trust, and committed to walking faithfully every single day under His authority, guided by His wisdom, strengthened by His presence, and devoted entirely to reflecting His truth in every area of your existence as you continue forward without retreat, without compromise, without distraction, fully anchored, fully aligned, fully surrendered to God alone. There is a dimension of surrender where you no longer ask God to adjust to your plans, but you allow your plans to dissolve into His will. That is the turning point. That is where spiritual language becomes more than expression. It becomes evidence that your inner world has shifted allegiance. You are no longer governed by impulse, you are governed by obedience. You are no longer driven by insecurity, you are anchored in trust. And when that shift happens, you begin to walk differently even before you speak differently. God is not looking for those who can produce moments of intensity. God is searching for those who can sustain devotion in ordinary days. It is easy to feel powerful in an atmosphere charged with emotion. It is rare to remain faithful when you are alone with your thoughts, when distractions whisper, when fatigue sets in. But it is in those ordinary hours that your true spiritual stature is revealed. If you can remain aligned in obscurity, you will stand firm in visibility. Many people confuse spiritual sensation with spiritual authority. Sensation fades, authority remains. Authority is built through repetition of obedience. Authority is strengthened through consistent discipline. Authority grows when you choose truth over temptation repeatedly, not occasionally. And when your spirit is trained to yield to God daily, you develop a resilience that cannot be shaken by circumstances. There is a reason why God often delays visible results. Delay tests your sincerity. Delay exposes whether you are committed to the outcome or committed to obedience. When you pray deeply and nothing changes immediately, that is where your faith is purified. That is where your motives are refined. If you continue trusting when you see no evidence, you are stepping into a deeper realm of alignment. Understand this, the real battleground is your thought life. If your thoughts are chaotic, your actions will be unstable. If your thoughts are disciplined, your actions will be decisive. When you commune with God beyond your understanding, your thoughts begin to come under divine order. Fearful imaginations lose power. Negative assumptions weaken. You start thinking with clarity instead of reacting with panic. This is transformation at the root. God desires to reshape not only your speech, but your perception. When your perception changes, everything changes. You stop seeing trials as punishment and start seeing them as preparation. You stop seeing opposition as rejection and start seeing it as redirection. You stop seeing delay as denial and start seeing it as development. This shift in perception is evidence that your spirit is maturing. You must guard against spiritual pride. The moment you believe you have arrived, you begin to decline. Depth requires humility. The deeper you go, the more aware you become of your dependence on God. The more you experience alignment, the less you boast in yourself. True spiritual strength produces humility, not arrogance. There is also a dimension of silence where God trains your ears more than your mouth.
Before you speak, you learn to listen.
Before you act, you learn to discern. Before you decide, you learn to seek guidance. Many rush to speak without first submitting their heart to correction. But when you are truly aligned, you become sensitive, you weigh your words, you measure your motives, you examine your intentions. When you cultivate this sensitivity, your relationships begin to change. You respond with patience instead of irritation. You choose forgiveness instead of resentment. You speak truth without cruelty. You carry conviction without harshness. This balance does not come from emotion, it comes from disciplined surrender. God is not building fragile devotion in you. He is constructing fortified faith. Faith that does not collapse when challenged. Faith that does not disappear when mocked. Faith that does not weaken when tested. And fortified faith requires training. Training requires repetition. Repetition requires commitment. You must become intentional about what you feed your spirit. If you consume distraction constantly, you will struggle to cultivate depth. If you allow negativity to dominate your focus, your alignment will weaken. Guard your attention. Protect your focus. Your spirit thrives on truth, discipline, and consistency. There will be seasons where you feel stretched beyond your comfort. In those moments, do not retreat. Stretching expands capacity. Capacity determines impact. If God is increasing your pressure, He may be increasing your potential. Do not interpret stretching as abandonment. It is often preparation for greater responsibility. When you truly understand that spiritual language is rooted in surrender, you stop chasing validation. To grow quietly, you are willing to be misunderstood if it means remaining obedient. You no longer seek approval from people who do not share your convictions. Your identity is stabilized. Stability is powerful. A stable person cannot be easily manipulated. A stable person cannot be easily discouraged. A stable person stands firm when trends shift and opinions change. And stability is born from daily alignment with God. You must also learn to confront your inner excuses. Excuses delay growth. Excuses protect comfort, but growth requires honesty. If you lack discipline, admit it. If you struggle with distraction, confront it. If pride surfaces, humble yourself quickly. Self-awareness is strength, not weakness. As you continue surrendering, you will notice your confidence changing. It will no longer be loud or desperate. It will be calm and assured. You will speak with conviction, not because you want attention, but because you are anchored in truth. You will act with courage, not because you feel no fear, but because you trust God beyond your fear. There is a sacred rhythm in spiritual maturity. Seek, surrender, strengthen, serve. As you seek God, you surrender your will. As you surrender, you are strengthened. You serve with integrity. And service becomes the overflow of transformation, not an attempt to prove worth. God does not need your performance. God desires your faithfulness. Faithfulness in small decisions. Faithfulness in private. Faithfulness in unseen responsibilities. Small acts of obedience accumulate into strong character. Strong character sustains long-term impact. You will face moments where compromise seems easier. In those moments, remember that temporary comfort can cause lasting strength. Integrity may feel costly in the present, but it builds security for the future. When you choose righteousness over convenience, you fortify your foundation. There is a depth where even your ambitions are surrendered. You no longer pursue success for recognition, you pursue excellence as an offering. You no longer chase influence, you cultivate impact through integrity. Your goals align with purpose rather than ego. Do not be discouraged if progress feels slow. Deep roots grow gradually. Shallow roots grow quickly but collapse easily. Choose depth over speed. Choose consistency over intensity. Choose endurance over excitement. God is shaping your resilience. Resilience is the ability to remain steady under pressure. It is the ability to keep trusting when emotions fluctuate. It is the ability to remain obedient when outcomes are uncertain. Resilience is a mark of maturity. As your resilience strengthens, your influence expands naturally. People are drawn to stability. They are drawn to authenticity. They are drawn to conviction that is lived, not merely spoken. Your life becomes a quiet testimony of alignment. You must remain vigilant against complacency. Growth requires continual pursuit. The moment you become passive, stagnation begins. Keep seeking deeper understanding. Keep refining your habits. Keep evaluating your motives. Growth is ongoing. There will be times when you feel isolated in your convictions. Do not interpret isolation as failure. Sometimes separation is necessary for strengthening. When you are not surrounded by affirmation, your reliance on God intensifies. That reliance deepens your roots. You are being prepared for responsibilities you cannot yet see. Preparation requires patience. It requires training. It requires surrender. Do not rush the process. Trust the formation. When you truly live surrender, your priorities become clear. Time is valued. Words are measured. Decisions are intentional. You stop drifting and start directing your life under divine guidance. And in that state of alignment, even your silence carries authority. Even your presence brings peace. Even your steady endurance inspires others. This is not manufactured, it is cultivated. Remember that transformation is not an event, it is a journey. Every day presents opportunities to choose surrender. Every challenge presents opportunities to strengthen trust. Every delay presents opportunities to deepen faith. Do not reduce your spiritual life to moments of expression. Let it permeate your work ethic, your relationships, your habits, your reactions. Let it shape how you respond to criticism, how you handle success, how you endure setbacks. God is not merely refining your words, He is entire being. And when your being is aligned, your expression becomes authentic. Your devotion becomes steady. Your courage becomes unshakable. You are not created for shallow living. You are designed for depth. Depth requires surrender. Surrender requires humility. Humility invites strength, produces endurance. Endurance sustains purpose. Stand firm in your pursuit. Guard your ally.